Since the beginning of the Russia-Ukraine war, long-range strikes have played a central but evolving role. Early in the conflict, missile and drone attacks were widely interpreted as tools of shock and intimidation, intended to quickly weaken Ukraine's ability to resist. Over time, however, their function has shifted. Today, Russia's long-range strike campaign is no longer about rapid battlefield breakthroughs. Instead,
be more efficient against harder to kill targets.
Effort to shape the war's broader environment militarily. Economically and psychologically, these strikes are now integrated into a wider strategy aimed at wearing down Ukraine's defensive systems, testing Western support, and reshaping the tempo of the conflict. This campaign is not defined by single dramatic attacks, but by repetition, persistence, and pressure. Energy infrastructure, logistics hubs, air defense networks, and dual-use civilian facilities have all become part of a long-term targeting pattern. Each strike, taken alone, may appear limited, but collectively, they are altering how the war is fought. Understanding this shift is essential. Not only does it explain current developments on the battlefield, it also reveals how modern wars are increasingly shaped by endurance rather than decisive victories. Russia has long viewed long-range strike capabilities as a core element of its military doctrine. During the Cold War, missiles and strategic aviation were designed primarily for deterrence and escalation control. In post-Soviet conflicts, these tools were increasingly used to compensate for weaknesses in ground operations. In Syria, Russia demonstrated how precision and standoff weapons could project power while limiting direct exposure. That experience influenced planning for Ukraine, where initial expectations assumed that missile strikes would rapidly degrade command structures, air defenses, and morale. However, Ukraine proved far more resilient than anticipated. Critical systems were repaired quickly, command structures adapted, and air defenses, supported by Western assistance, improved over time. Rather than abandoning this approach, Moscow adjusted it. Long-range strikes became less about immediate collapse and more about long-term pressure. This adjustment mirrors a broader strategic shift, from short war assumptions to acceptance of a prolonged conflict. In this context, missiles and drones are no longer tactical tools alone. They are instruments of strategic messaging, economic disruption, and operational shaping. Today, Russia conducts long-range strikes as part of a continuous cycle, rather than isolated offensives. The targets selected reveal clear priorities. Energy infrastructure remains a frequent focus, especially during periods of high civilian demand. Transportation nodes, maintenance facilities, and logistics centers are also consistently targeted. Equally important is the pressure placed on Ukraine's air defense network. Each strike forces Ukraine to expend interceptors, redeploy systems, and prioritize protection of key assets. Even successful defenses come at a cost, gradually straining limited resources. Russia has also diversified its strike toolkit. Cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and long-range drones are used in combination. This complicates detection and interception, forcing Ukraine to respond across multiple threat profiles simultaneously. The goal is not total destruction. Instead, it is disruption. Power outages, transport delays, and repair burdens accumulate. Over time, these effects influence military readiness, industrial output, and civilian endurance. This sustained approach reflects a war of attrition conducted at distance, one that minimizes Russian frontline exposure while maintaining constant pressure. From a military perspective, long-range strikes serve several interconnected functions. First, they disrupt logistics. Modern armies rely on complex supply chains, and even minor interruptions can delay operations or reduce effectiveness. Second, they degrade maintenance capacity. Repair facilities, spare parts storage, and skilled personnel are all vulnerable to disruption. Equipment that cannot be repaired becomes functionally irrelevant, regardless of how many units exist on paper. Third, strikes shape battlefield decision-making. Commanders must account for infrastructure reliability, transportation safety, and air defense availability when planning operations. This constrains flexibility and limits offensive options. For Russia, this approach offers certain advantages. It leverages existing capabilities, avoids high-casualty risks, and shifts the burden of defense onto Ukraine. However, it is not without costs. Missile production is expensive, and sustained campaigns require industrial output, components, and financial resources. The effectiveness of this strategy therefore depends on balance, whether the pressure applied outweighs the resources consumed. So far, Russia appears willing to accept these costs in exchange for long-term influence over the conflict's pace. While the strike campaign is framed in military terms, its effects inevitably extend into civilian life. Energy networks, transportation systems, and communications infrastructure often serve both military and civilian purposes. When these systems are disrupted, civilians experience immediate consequences. Power outages affect heating, water supply, healthcare, and industry. Transport disruptions limit mobility and economic activity. Over time, these pressures shape public resilience and national endurance. From a strategic standpoint, this impact is not incidental. It forms part of a broader effort to strain societal systems and complicate governance. However, Ukraine has demonstrated a high degree of adaptation, repairing damage quickly and reorganizing critical services. International assistance has also played a key role, providing equipment, funding, and expertise. As a result, civilian impact, while significant, has not translated into strategic collapse. This dynamic highlights a central reality of modern conflict. Civilian resilience has become as important as military capability. The broader implications of Russia's strike campaign extend far beyond Ukraine. Militaries worldwide are closely observing how sustained long-range pressure shapes conflict outcomes. One lesson is clear. Long-range strike capabilities are no longer merely escalation tools. They are instruments of continuous competition. Another lesson concerns air defense. Even advanced systems face challenges when confronted with persistent, multi-vector threats. For smaller states, Ukraine's experience underscores the importance of redundancy, rapid repair, and decentralized systems. For larger powers, it raises questions about the vulnerability of complex infrastructure in prolonged conflicts. Politically, the campaign also influences international dynamics. Each escalation tests the limits of Western support and shapes diplomatic calculations. The war thus becomes not only a military contest, but a strategic signal to the wider world. Looking ahead, several trajectories are possible. Russia may continue refining its strike campaign, integrating new systems and adapting to Ukrainian defenses. Alternatively, resource constraints or political shifts could limit its intensity. Ukraine, for its part, is likely to further strengthen air defenses, diversify energy systems, and expand counter-strike capabilities. Over time, this could reduce the effectiveness of long-range pressure. A key variable will be external support. Sustained assistance enables resilience. Reduced support increases vulnerability. As such, the strike campaign is as much about influencing international resolve as it is about military outcomes. Experts increasingly view this phase of the war as a contest of adaptation. Victory will not come from a single breakthrough, but from cumulative advantages built over time. Russia's long-range strike campaign has evolved into a defining feature of the Ukraine war. It reflects a shift away from rapid victory towards sustained pressure, endurance, and strategic shaping. These strikes are not designed to win the war outright. They are designed to influence how the war is fought, how long it lasts, and how much it costs. Their true impact lies not in immediate damage, but in the constant demand they place on defense, repair, and resilience. For Ukraine, the challenge is not simply to survive each strike, but to maintain functionality despite them. For the wider world, the lesson is clear: modern wars are increasingly decided not by dramatic moments, but by the ability to adapt under continuous pressure. In that sense, the long-range strike campaign is reshaping not only this war, but the future of conflict itself.